Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans and one chaos coordinator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we're going to let Mr. Robert Kroese introduce himself to our listeners and viewers at home.
Hi. Kroese is actually how I pronounce my last name, Robert Kroese. Okay. No worries. I don't know, I've written like 36 books now, and I think I was on your show like a while ago, and we talked about some stuff. I've got a Kickstarter going on right now, and that's the main thing I've got happening right now.
Yeah, this is episode 592, and you were on in the 300s. So it's been a little bit. Just a little bit.
It's been a little while.
And so the next part of the introduction, dear listeners, how we found them. And I think we met through Upstream Reviews, but don't quote me on that because you and I have been Facebook and Discord friends for longer than I can remember.
Yeah, I don't know if it was Upstream. Yeah, that's where I see you most of the time anyway, so.
Yeah, I like I said, we've been talking so many of the authory places that it's hard to keep everything straight.
Right.
But so before we get started, this is the Blasters and Blades podcast, and we do have to do the religion question. So are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
All right. Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly?
I got to go with Firefly.
Okay. What is it about Firefly that speaks to you?
I like the sort of rebellious one man against the system kind of feel to it, and also Star Trek. Well, Star Wars in particular has gotten dumber and dumber over the last few years. I used to be a huge Star Wars fan, and now I just don't engage with Star Wars anymore at all because I completely lost interest in it. So
I don't know what you're talking about. There were 3 amazing movies and a whole bunch of books. I mean, it was so good. I wish there was more, but.
Yeah, it's a shame that there never was anymore.
There was so much wasted potential when Disney bought Star Wars, and it's kind of frustrating that they just kind of pissed all over it.
Yeah, I had high hopes for a while, and I kind of held on for a little while, and hoping things were going to straighten out and they would figure out what they had and what to do with it, and they never did, and just kind of kept doubling down on the same garbage that they were doing, and I finally decided it just wasn't worth it.
Part of the stuff that people get mad at them for with the legends, what they call legends now, which was just the books at the time, like Lucas never met an idea he didn't say yes to. So there are some of the books that it's a known quantity to get to, from point A to point B is X days. And you have Han and Luke at both places closer than they could travel because nobody worried about legends and lore and internal consistency. So I get why you would have to be selective. But if you had like 10 people on a dedicated team, like you could organize those, edit the dates as necessary, and form a cohesive legends and lore with what was already there and just, streamline the timeline. You could make it work and just republish everything. And the authors are going to be pleased because you just, republished books that haven't seen the light of day for a while. It could have been saved. They just...
Yeah, I mean, there were plenty of options that they could have, other roads they could have gone down, and they just picked pretty much the worst, with a few exceptions of, good things that they did. They picked kind of the worst road at every possible fork, and it just got tiresome.
Yeah, I thought Rogue One was really good, though.
I enjoyed that one, and Solo actually was pretty decent.
I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, that one's actually it's decent. I mean, there are dumb things about it, like all of them, but mostly I was kind of sad that one didn't do better, but then they did so much garbage after that I lost track of it, and I don't pay attention.
I liked the beginning of The Mandalorian. It had potential, and then
that was another one. Yeah,
they went too gimmicky. Anybody that's ever been camping or in a desert knows nothing's that clean. So when they went to that desert town and everything looked like it was brand new out of the box, I'm like, no, kind of lost the vibe.
Yeah.
And then I did like Andor. That's the one where the average soldier fighting. For me, Like that's just more. That speaks to me more anyway. The everyman kind of story. Like super soldiers are great, but they're not as attainable as Joe Marine and Column 2 is, right?
Yeah,
and I like the stories that could be me, or someone I know, and so that's I really thought Andor did a good job on that one.
I haven't. That's after I stopped paying attention, so I
watched that one with the boys, so it was worth it. I haven't gone back to season 2 mostly because I canceled Disney for a while because budgets are a thing. At some point, I might go back to it because I did not like that one. I thought that one was well done. But there were so many that weren't that it makes it hard to justify sometimes torturing yourself.
Yeah.
We watched the first couple episodes of Ahsoka. And after watching the sword fights in like the original series where it looked like they were literally fighting with swords, and then you watch the ones that is for Ahsoka, and it's like, first off, this looks like it was done in slow motion and then slowed down even more, like the geriatric ward of sword fighting, which was just frustrating. I mean, I get if you go slow for safety reasons and you didn't spend as much time training them on swords, but you could speed that up in post. Like the magic of movie mayhem, like they could have made that look better just with a little bit of editing.
Yeah, it's really kind of inexplicable the choices, a lot of the choices that they made. It just just didn't seem like they were trying in a lot of ways, and it's just disheartening.
That age-old issue when you play in someone else's playground, it only works if you're a super fan of that world.
Yeah.
If you don't like the worlds you're playing in, you can't do it a service. And if you don't like it and you can't understand why the fans like it, you can't serve what they want.
Yeah, I know. It just seems like the people who are running it now don't have a sense for the kind of I don't know, idealism and heroism that characterized the original movies, and there's much smaller minded people with smaller concerns, and it just doesn't the passion isn't there.
Yeah, and I also think the good versus evil is considered too, like in a world where we want to make everything gray.
Yeah.
I think there's room for the hero's journey, and I think they've it's just not in vogue anymore with literati.
Everything has to be subverted, and everything has to be, we have to see everything from the, the bad guy's perspective, and it's like, no, it doesn't. You can just have a simple story that's the good guys versus the bad guys. It still works.
It's like everyone's shooting to be the guy that did the next great thing, so they're taking chances, and in the meantime, they're just telling crap stories because they're trying to be, the guy who did the one thing instead of the guy who told a story everyone liked.
Yeah.
Or girl, whatever. I don't think it's gendered. I just think it's the difference of people who like literary fiction versus like fun fiction. Not that there's anything wrong with literary fiction. If that's your thing, dear listener, it's just not my thing. I enjoy entertainment and not lectures. I know it's a little passive aggressive, but don't go with it.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Because we are polytheistic here at the Blasters and Blades podcast, Game of Thrones, The Wheel of Time, or Chronicles of Narnia?
I can't pick Lord of the Rings.
You can.
That seems like the obvious choice out of those. I mean, if I had to pick one, I'd go with Narnia, I think. But I'm more of a, or if I could go with C.S. Lewis's space trilogy, either that or Lord of the Rings. If I could squeeze one of those in there, those would be the ones.
So the reason we took Lord of the Rings off, and it might have been on the list when you were here last, is because when you have Lord of the Rings as one of the fantasy choices, everyone picks it, and it just wasn't fair.
Yeah,
and it was kind of boring air. Like, okay,
right. What are you going to pick? Yeah.
And everyone says Lord of the Rings. But I wanted like the criteria to pick these choices for the religion questions are, one, we want them to kind of be iconic. And Lord of the Rings is one of the iconic ones. And then two, we wanted something that was across various mediums. So like all of the properties we listed, they have graphic novels or comic books, they have books, and they have film adaptations and sometimes games. And that way the listeners of the podcast, wherever they're coming from, it applies. But I don't expect everybody's answer to be that way, because if you only read, you're not going to know about the games, the book, or the movies or whatever. And that's cool too.
Yeah, so, I can't think of another property that fits that's that wide that fits any of those. Yeah, I would just have Lord of the Rings is the only one I can think of.
Yeah,
seems like there should be another one. I don't know.
I mean, there are other good ones, but they're not as groundbreaking. I mean, everything you would name would be standing on the shoulders of Tolkien.
Yeah, and you could, Conan. You could go back further than.
Yeah, that would be a fair one. I do enjoy Conan.
I'm not I mean, I like Conan, but I've never been like a huge. But people will fight and say that the Conan and those kind of stories came before Lord of the Rings, and say that they will fight with you if you tell them that Lord of the Rings that Tolkien invented fantasy, because there was all these other, Lovecraft and I don't know who all that were Burroughs and everything that were there before Tolkien. But Tolkien is the one that everybody knows and kind of cemented the genre in people's minds.
Yeah, like I said, they're all good. I tried to go with what was culturally iconic. So Tolkien's an excellent answer. One of the crying shames of adulthood is we stop asking each other the most important questions. So we do want to bring that back here on the Blasters and Blades podcast. I'm going to ask you, sir, what is your favorite dinosaur?
Favorite dinosaur? I don't know. I'm going to go. I kind of want to say Velociraptor, but I want to say, I think I'm going to say T-Rex. T-Rex is kind of an obvious answer, but it's a classic. I want to go with the T-Rex because they got the little arms that I think are awesome.
It's not as funny when you picture them as little murder chickens, though, with feathers.
Yeah, right. Like they supposedly all had feathers now, right? That's what they're saying. Yeah. We need to be tarring and feathering more scientists, I think, because there was a point at which we knew all that we needed to know about dinosaurs, and we didn't need to know the thing about that they're just giant birds. Like that's a step too far. I don't care if it is true. We don't. That's hate speech. It's like making Pluto not a planet anymore. Like we didn't need to.
I saw a T-shirt out the other day, and because I'm a nerd, I noticed it. It says, "Dear NASA, I was big enough for your mother." Signed, Pluto.
Right. Yeah.
I was just like, this guy gets it. I could be friends with him.
Yeah. There's some things that sometimes science goes too far. We know too much. We need to go back.
And this came up. I found some channels on YouTube because I was diving into the conspiracy theory just because it's fun. I don't think all of it's true, but that reptile people live at the middle of the earth. But it's fun to think about some of these things, right? Yeah. And I found a channel that purports to say they solved the Roanoke mystery and the missing 9th Roman Legion, and like their answers are like, okay, that actually kind of makes sense, and we kind of thought that, but there's something to be said for the mystery of not knowing of what that does for the imagination. So I kind of hope they made it all up just so we can keep the mystery alive.
Were they was it the same explanation for both the Roanoke?
No, so the 9th Roman Legion, they said they found them buried in the Scottish Highlands, which would mean that the Picts and the other tribes of the area, the Celts, the Picts, and I can't remember who else, would have beat them in battle and just killed them and buried the bodies. That would explain it. And if it was a loss that was shameful, I could see covering it up. But I also like the idea of they get sucked through wormholes and they end up in fantasy worlds. And we've got, Steiger's Tigers and other series.
I actually had, it is kind of a classic trope. And I believe it's the 4th Iron Dragon book where with the space Vikings and stuff. And actually I explain what happens to the 9th Legion in that book. So you have to read through the
Vikings, you said.
Yeah, I have this whole series called The Saga of the Iron Dragon, which is about these people in the future who go back in time and they crash land in medieval Norway, and they basically meet these Vikings and they have to try to get back into space. So they have to. It sounds ridiculous, but it's actually a serious straight. It's not one of my funny books. They have to basically teach the Vikings how to build a spaceship. And it takes them about 50, 60 years to do it. And there's a lot of a lot of crazy stuff that happens along the way because they're in medieval Europe. And then in the later books, they actually there's another group that goes back even further, and then I explain what happens to the Ninth Legion, among other things.
Is that available in audiobook? Because I'm gonna have to check that out on payday.
It is, yeah. The whole series is available on audio. Yep. Saga of the Iron Dragon. Yeah, it's probably my most popular series overall, except for my very first novel sold really well because it was way back in the Stone Ages when there was very little competition from like other ebooks and stuff, and so I kind of made a splash because I was one of the first people who came out with like self-published ebooks and stuff. So I did well with that. But overall, the Iron Dragon series is the one that's probably my most people like the most, and it sold the most copies. So yeah, I'm pretty proud of that series. It came together very well.
Yeah, that's I'll have to check that out. Concept's right up my alley.
You like it. It's got a lot of military stuff, history stuff, and fighting with Vikings and the Siege of Paris and all kinds of cool Roman legions and all kinds of crazy stuff, and space battles too.
Can't beat that. I know with the Roanoke colony, they posited that they just went into the hinterland and joined the natives because they kind of had to survive.
Right.
That one hinged on, at one point in time, maps were made of cloth, not like the cloth they would wear for clothing, but the canvas type material. Mm-hmm. And they were expensive to make. So if you had a change, a lot of times they would sew a patch over the area and then adjust accordingly. And they found a map that was in a family collection that they looked under the patch, and it kind of showed the colony moving, which kind of makes sense. That's what everyone kind of thought. We just never found proof. I haven't vetted the source yet, mostly because life happens and you got to please your publishers and write your words. But it's one of those things I want to dig into. It's like I said, but for me, it's more fun to have those mysteries, right? Like if we know all the answers, it's not it's fun.
Yeah, you don't really necessarily want to know all the answers. It's more fun to have some mysteries.
Right. So now that we've got the question out of the way, we have one more of the religion questions. Are you ready for this, sir?
Yeah, let's do it.
We are civilized human beings here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. We are no longer knuckle dragging troglodytes. So coffee or tea, and how do you take it?
Coffee with a whole bunch of half and half, and well, ideally sugar, but these days it's fake sugar because I'm trying to lose weight. But is
the flavor different when you use the fake sugar? I can't stomach it. It makes me feel sick, so I don't.
Really? It's like physically ill? I mean, it tastes a little different, but I don't mind it. I get used to it. It's not bad. It's not. I mean, once you go. You get used to it, and then you have like real sugar again, and you're like, "Oh wow, that's right. That's what sugar is like," and it's like amazing. But then if you don't think about it, you don't really remember how good sugar is, and you can settle for the fake stuff.
So I have I'm considered pre-diabetic, not because I have any of the issues with my A1C markers or anything, but because it's so strongly indicated in the family. In fact, my grandpa passed away from complications of his diabetes. And they think the doctor, because I even asked, I tried the substitutes and it made me feel ill. And apparently that's not uncommon for people with sugar issues, that they can't stomach the artificial stuff. So I just drink the milk and sugar-free syrups for flavor. I'll add like whole milk and then the flavor syrups.
But doesn't the syrup have some kind of fake sugar in it too?
Whatever they use in the sugar-free syrup doesn't affect my stomach the way something like the little Splenda type stuff did.
Yeah.
It's possible there are other sugar substitutes I haven't tried yet, but after you try 2 or 3, you realize you're spending a lot of money to get the same results, that I just stopped.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to be able to just eat anything. When I was a kid, I was like super skinny and I could just eat anything. It didn't matter. I would drink like 6 until I think about when I was about 30, I was drinking like 6 Dr. Peppers a day, cans of Dr. Pepper, the full sugar stuff. And then I started to put on a little weight around the middle, and I was like, I better cut out the Dr. Pepper. So I switched to diet soda, and that gave me about another 5 years. And then I had to start like watching my diet overall, or I would still keep putting on weight. And so now these days, now I'm 55 years old, so I can't just eat crap anymore. I gotta watch what I eat. So anyway,
I started out as a porker as a kid, although we called our pants husky, not fat back then. And then I got in shape for sports in high school and the Army. And then when you're running 5 miles a day, like you can eat whatever the hell you want to eat.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You can be second sir.
I would have been super fat as a kid, but I just didn't have the genes for it. I was just like so skinny, like almost dangerously skinny until I was like in my 20s, you know. So
yeah, for me, I started genetics in high school, and it was just they worked you till you dropped.
Yeah,
and then they made you get up and do it all over again. It's great for losing weight.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, you burn a crazy amount of calories.
You do. It was fun too. It's a good way for boys to get their aggression out, to play content.
Yeah, yeah, get them exhausted.
Yeah, you
get it all out.
Get yourself in trouble.
Yeah.
Which is why when they talk about like anti-crime type programs, and we're not a political podcast, but I will say anything that is physically laborious, like sports or volunteering, picking up trash, anything that gets them moving, I think is a step in the right direction. I suspect many of our societal woes are tied to the fact that we're too sedentary.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. Yeah.
I just don't think humans are meant to live in big cities like that, congregated together, and then just sit around that much.
Yeah, we're a pretty unhealthy people because of the way we live. So yeah, I have to make an effort to exercise every day, because otherwise, well, I mean, it's for my health and also just my mental well-being. I just feel so much better if I get some activity in, and then also get out and get some sunshine, at least in the when I can in the summer. I'm in Michigan, so our winters are. I there's not a whole lot of sunshine in the winters, but when in
you
the
almost
summer,
need to invest in some sort of indoor gym in your
garage. I've got sort of a weight room in my basement. But what I do, my solution is I flee to South America in the winter for at least a month, and I may actually be moving down there. So more permanently, I'm going to be maybe moving permanently-ish to Ecuador. So it's pretty much always warm in Ecuador. So warm and sunny.
Is it just because of the cost of living? Or do you got
cost of living? And it's because my family's here. But enough on that. No, I have a girlfriend down there, and I've actually been down there I've been down there 4 times now. Spent about, I don't know, 90, 100 days, something like that. Actually, I think I broke their immigration laws. I got fined because I was down there too long, because I counted wrong, because I'm an idiot. But yeah, I was coming back, and they're going over the dates, how long I was there, and they were like, they're just she's doing math. Anytime somebody's doing math when you're like leaving your country, they're like looking at your passport and your visit dates and trying to do math. I'm like, this is not good. You should not be doing math. And yeah, so I got a big fine for that. But yeah, they are going to let me back into the country, and so I'm heading back in. Actually, in July, I'm going to be going on there for a month or so, and then coming back to Michigan for BasedCon, which I don't know if we're going to talk about that at all, but then going back down to Ecuador, maybe to stay there more or less permanently. So we'll see.
Ben Franklin said, "Good fences make good neighbors." Apparently, you're taking that one step further and saying long driveways make good neighbors.
Yeah,
Michigan to Ecuador is a little bit of a hike.
A little bit, yeah. Another continent that it gets me safely away from certain people.
So they're not going to come borrow sugar for you. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
All right. So how did you get into speculative fiction? Like, were you always a fan of sci-fi and fantasy, or like, how did you discover broadly the genre?
Yeah, I think I was always a fan. I can't remember the first like sci-fi stuff that I was exposed to. Star Wars, the original Star Wars came out in 1977 when I was 7 years old. So I don't really remember life before Star Wars, but I remember Star Wars being this gigantic event, and that it kind of took over life for a few years there. And like Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi, that was like a lot of my childhood, and it was kind of dominated by that. So that was, and like kids, the way that things are fractured now, there's no real common culture that we have. There isn't any. I mean, there's like Game of Thrones is pretty big. I'm trying to think of anything else. Like what else? I mean, like when the Marvel movies, the first Marvel movies came out and the Avengers and stuff, those were pretty big. But even those, like the biggest events that you can think of that everybody was waiting for, they paled in comparison to the way that things were with Star Wars. Where like we had Star Wars cards, we had the Star Wars figures, we would talk about Star Wars at recess, and we would watch the stupid Star Wars Christmas special, and we had like for Valentine's Day we'd be giving each other Star Wars Valentines, and just like everything was Star Wars for like years, and it was just kind of I was kind of just grew up in that. And beyond that, I remember the first, I think, real science fiction book that I read was Robert Heinlein's Red Planet, which is one of his juveniles. So it was like perfect because I was 9 years old, and they're good substantive sci-fi novels, but they're written in kind of an accessible, not like a dumbed down children's style, but in a style that a smart 9-year-old can easily read. And I love that Red Planet. And then I went on from I just became a huge sci-fi fan. Always wanted to write a novel, and finally did. I wrote a book. I finished it in 2009 or so. Yeah, 2009. Called Mercury Falls, about an angel basically trying to either cause or stop the apocalypse. It's not entirely clear which side he's on. So that was my first book, Mercury Falls, and then I wrote several sequels to that, and then I got more into. I wrote some sort of humorous fantasy stuff, and then more serious sci-fi stuff, and I kind of jump around different genres or subgenres within the fantasy sci-fi realm.
So you mentioned BaseCon. So before we start talking about the Kickstarter that brought us here, now that we've got your nerd pedigree, what is BaseCon?
So BaseCon, I know you said this isn't a political podcast, so I'm going to try not to be super political about this. But I used to love to go to sci-fi cons, meet other people, sci-fi fans, and sci-fi, my favorite authors, and at the big cons you'd meet, people from Star Trek or Battlestar Galactica or whatever, and it was a lot of fun. A few years ago, these cons started to get kind of cliquish. There was, I won't go into details, but there's a certain political angle that became sort of the politically correct way of looking at things. And if you were outside of that, which I definitely am, you were not welcome and did not feel welcome at these events. And it was made very clear that people who were outside of that kind of clique or ideology weren't welcome. And I stopped going to cons because it just wasn't fun anymore. For me, it wasn't a political thing. It was just, why am I doing this? It's a tax write-off because I'm a writer, and it's good networking, and I sell a few books, but mainly it's a social thing and a fun thing. And it just wasn't fun anymore. And I was talking to a few other authors on Twitter who felt the same way. And I said, we should just have a get together, a bunch of us authors, and just get together and have like an old fashioned sci-fi con and just talk about sci-fi and whatever. And then other people joined in the conversation and said, hey, what about fans? Could we come? And I was like, sure, why not? Maybe I'll throw something together. I put together an interest list and said, we'll see. If you're interested in this, go to this page and sign up. And if there's enough interest, I will send out emails and keep you updated on what's going on. And if I ever put something together, and I, got a fair number of people on this list, enough that I was like, I think I could justify putting something together. I ended up renting this huge house, which like an Airbnb basically. And I put up a web store basically, and with a registration page, and it was like, I don't know, $100 or something that people had to pay to go to this thing, and all the food was included. So they could stay. A lot of people stayed on site or at a hotel nearby. And I was thinking, if I get 30 people to register for this thing, then my expenses of renting this Airbnb are covered. Because I like put this, I didn't have the money. I was like, I put it on my credit card, just kind of like hoping, okay, I hope people are not just saying that they're interested in this to make me feel good. So 30 people was my, like, if I don't get 30 people, then I'm going to be on the hook for some money that I don't have. We ended up having 70 people the first year. The second year it was like 90, and then the third year was something like 100. Last year was around 100 and 110 or so. I think it's going to be down a little bit this year, but close to last year's numbers. This will be our fifth year, and it's here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, just because this is where I live. And we just get together and we talk about sci-fi, panels, play games. Let's see, who have we had? We had John Carmack, who's the guy who created Doom, among other things, kind of a legendary game designer. He came to the second one and the third one. We've had Blaine Pardo, who's a big BattleTech, written probably 100 books in a lot of different genres. Bill Willingham, who did the Fables comic series. He used to do a bunch of I remember him from like the old D&D adventures modules, some of the art that he did for those. So he's an artist and a writer and a great guy. We've had a couple of Prometheus award-winning authors. So we even though we're a very, very small con, we punch way above our weight class as far as the quality of guests and panels. And I put the quality of our panels at BasedCon up against any con that I've ever been to. They're absolutely fantastic, because we have just a really, really great group of people, and it's the people that make it happen. I mean, I just facilitated it and just got these people together, but it's fantastic every year. It's a great time, and I didn't know what I was doing. I'm not a con organizer. I'm terribly unorganized, and I'm a writer. I'm absent-minded and a space cadet and everything else. But everything, it always goes well, and even the first year was a little bit of a nightmare logistically, but everything worked out, and then now it's running pretty smoothly. So fifth year, September 5 to 7 in Grand Rapids, and the website is basedcon.com. So if anybody's interested in that, it's largely apolitical. I mean, there is politics obviously comes up at times, but nobody is unwelcome. We don't care if you're, left wing, right wing, centrist, socialist, Muslim, Jewish, atheist, whatever. And that's what makes us different as the con, is that we don't have any policy against anybody. We're not going to make anybody feel unwelcome unless you're a jerk. Basically, if you show up and you're in everybody's face, or assaulting people or yelling at people or something, then we will escort you out. But other than that, if you just want to come and talk to people and have fun, we don't care who you are. It doesn't matter.
Okay, now you have to have some standard. So how do you feel about people that put pineapples on pizza?
I'm one of those people, so I am actually okay with it. Yeah, I think it's delicious. The thing that this is what how insane I am. What I like to do is I make a ham sandwich with mayonnaise and mustard, and I put raisins on it. Because it's like the same sort of sweetness that you get from pineapple on pizza, with combined with the saltiness of the ham and stuff. It's just delicious. So yeah. So you think pineapple on pizza is bad? Raisins on a ham sandwich. Try that sometime.
That is not something I've heard of before. I don't know what to say.
I think, as far as I know, I invented it, but I've had other people say, "Okay, I have to try this," and they're like, "Hey, this is actually pretty good." So if you like raisins, some people just don't like raisins, which I don't understand at all, because I love raisins. But
I love raisins, but I wouldn't think to put them on pizza.
Not on well, you could put it on pizza. I think it would probably work, but on a ham do like a ham sandwich, toast it.
My mind was stuck on pizza. Okay.
Yeah. Well, we started talking about pizza, and then I changed it to ham sandwich. If you like a grilled cheese and ham sandwich, but you put raisins on it before you put the cheese over top of the raisins, and then it melts onto the raisins. People are going to think I'm insane, but you should try it sometime because it's actually delicious.
So the funny thing is, my parents have been pretty helpful because, like I said, they bought us the AC went out. We talked about that in the pre-show in the middle of this heat wave. So my parents lent me the money to buy a window unit so I could get my office cool enough to work again. Because when it's like 95 degrees in the house, it's probably not the best for your electronics.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, let me surprise them. And I went and I picked up pizza from the local Little Caesars. And they have these like glass containers that they'll stick your pizza in once you order it on the app or the phone or whatever. And you just go in, you enter your little number, and the door opens. And the door wouldn't open for my pizza order that I was picking up to take to my parents. And I'm like, oh, the pizza gods must be mad at me. Turns out the guy listens to the podcast. He says, that's because the pizza god is Hawaiian, JR. I'm like, oh,
you're being punished.
That's nice. I was just, this is the first time I've met anyone in the wild who actually listened to the show. So it was kind of cool.
That is cool.
I'll take the win and the loss at the same time, I guess.
Right. I think overall that's got to feel pretty good, I mean, it was kind of cool. Although you momentarily denied your pizza, but that's
well, he was able to get it out from the other side, but I just thought it was funny that he listened to the podcast enough to know I told all the pizza jokes, and he's like, that's because the pizza god is Hawaiian, JR.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So all right, so now that we got that out of the way, we brought you here to talk about your Kickstarter, which you're running for your newest series. So since you were kind enough to sponsor this episode, I downloaded the video that you have on the Kickstarter, so I'm going to show that to kind of give people a vibe, and then when we come back, we'll talk about it.
Okay. Hi, I'm Robert Kroese, and I'm launching a new space opera series called Ransom's Law. If you're familiar with my books, you'll know that I've written a lot of different sorts of stuff. Hard science fiction, alternate history, apocalyptic fiction, humor, cyberpunk, even a pastiche of Star Wars with the Rex Neolo books. But I've never done a straight space opera until now. Ransom's Law is set in a future where space travel runs on contracts, and one repo crew is starting to realize that those contracts are hiding something big. The series follows Cal Ransom, a former corporate lawyer who finds himself reassigned to a repo ship after uncovering a dangerous legal loophole. Now he's stuck with a misfit crew, a malfunctioning robotic judge, and a missing research vessel that might hold the key to a decades-old conspiracy. This Kickstarter will help fund the print run of Book 1, Acceleration Clause, along with Books 2 through 5, plus a comprehensive guide to the Ransom's Law universe, collectibles, and some very cool extras. If you like action, corporate secrets, legal intrigue, and dry humor in space, this series is for you. Thanks for checking out Ransom's Law. I hope you'll come aboard.
All right, thank you for sticking with the commercial interlude. So, first, I will say sometimes Kickstarters are a risk, dear listener, because if they don't get funded, you don't get the product. This one is already funded. I think you funded in like your first 11 hours or something crazy.
Yeah, it was like 10 hours. It was pretty wild.
So what made you decide to use the Kickstarter route for is it because you could fund the audiobooks, or is this just a new business model I'm not aware of?
Kickstarter as opposed to what? Just doing, just releasing the books.
Yeah. Just releasing them as you finish them.
Well, it's because I like money, and I make more money this way. It's also a promotion thing because there's a network of people who will find your work through Kickstarter. So it's sort of a marketing thing, and also it's the equivalent of it's sort of the modern equivalent of an advance. Publishers used to give advances. In fact, I got a few of them back in the day, and they still do sometimes. If you're a big name author, give you advances, which is nice because writing a book takes a while, and sometimes you need money to live while you're writing the book. So Kickstarter gives you a little bit of money in advance, so it makes it so that you can live and actually write your book. And also, it's kind of there's an overlap between the audience that you find through Kickstarter and on Amazon, but it doesn't overlap as much as you would think. So you actually are taking advantage of kind of two separate audience bases, reader bases, whatever you want to call them, readerships, by first launching on Kickstarter and then launching on Amazon. I say Amazon because I'm Amazon exclusive for various reasons. But that's another thing that it allows me to release on platforms like ebook platforms other than Amazon's. So people who don't do the Amazon thing can get the books that way. And then once that's out of the way, I go exclusive to Amazon because it's advantageous to me because of the way that Amazon has things set up. I won't go more into the weeds than that, but Amazon makes it attractive for authors to be Amazon exclusive. So once the Kickstarter is done and all the people get it, the advanced books, then I release the books on Amazon and I'm locked into that model.
Okay. So are these books already written? Some of them already written because you're doing the whole series on the Kickstarter.
Yeah. These are none of these are written actually for this one. Sometimes I have done some writing. Sometimes I'll have like one book done of the series. This time I'm doing more planning up front because this is kind of a big, it's probably, as far as world building and the scope of the project, it's probably my biggest project. Iron Dragon books that I was telling you about were a lot of research, historical research. And I had to do a lot of reading, and I did some traveling too, went to Europe and stuff for that. So that was a lot of work. But as far as actually building a world and mapping out the plot and how everything, all the organizations and corporations and everything connect to each other is a lot of work. So I'm doing more of that in advance. So the actual of the writing of the books is going to come after that. And so then I'm probably going to actually start writing in a month or two. I've got a little more planning to do to get everything kind of gelled, mapped out, and then I will actually write. But I've like I said, this is my 15th, I think, Kickstarter, and I've written 36 novels already. So I have kind of a pretty good idea at this point how the process works. So it's not a huge risk. I shouldn't tell people right off the bat that I'm planning to run away to South America, because that makes it sound like I'm just going to disappear. But I will stay in touch. I promise to deliver. I always do.
So if the series isn't written and you're in the planning stages right now, do you have like an idea of who the characters are going to be yet?
Yeah. So, well, a lot of them. Yeah. I have the main characters, and I have there's a kind of a conspiracy that undergirds the whole series that involves a lot of different people and goes back a long ways in time. And so I have all the basics of that mapped out. I won't go into details, obviously, because I don't want to ruin any surprise. But so I'm doing more planning than I usually do. I'm more of a, as far as the plotting versus pantsing thing. I'm more of a pantser. I just kind of make up things as I go along. This series, I really needed to plan a little bit more because of the nature of the series. But what I find is that no matter how much I plan, once I get writing, things go haywire, and it never follows what I was planning. But I also find that that's a good thing, because I'll get to a certain point and I'll have a character that I'm supposed to have him do X at this point, and I realize he doesn't want to do X, or there's some other reason why, but then what usually happens, or what almost always happens, is I'll find a better way to make it work than what I had originally come up with. So it's I'll always more ideas come to me as I'm writing. So I always think I have things plotted out, and then I'll get to a point in the story where I'm like, no, what should happen, what would be really neat is if this is connected to this, and things like that. I just don't conceive of them in enough depth to do that during the planning process. So it's always a surprise to me. So yes, on one hand, I have a lot of stuff planned out, and I know who the characters are, and I know the overarching plot that I'm aiming toward. On the other hand, who knows? I don't know. I never know where things are really going to end up going. So, but it always ends up working out, and I'm always happy with the result of it, one way or another. It's just there's a lot of stuff either going on in the back of my head or out there somewhere that's guiding me, but things always come together in the end.
So would you say this is more properly space opera as far as genres based on the description in the more classical sense?
Yeah, I call it a space opera. That's what I was aiming to write. I wanted to a long time to write a space opera, and I've written other books that are kind of like the Iron Dragon books. The background of that is there's a sort of a galactic war going on, and there's I have a series of humorous sci-fi books, the Rex Neolo series, that are sort of kind of Star Wars satire-ish, and they are. There's basically a space opera, but it's very light and zany humor kind of stuff. This one I wanted to have a little bit more serious sci-fi space opera feel to it. I've described it as Better Call Saul meets The Expanse. So that's kind of the feel that I'm going for, because the main character is basically a disgraced lawyer who becomes a repo agent who is in charge of repossessing spaceships, basically, and things go from there. But that's how it starts out.
So sometimes Kickstarters will have bonus awards aside from just the books, right? And then either print, hardcover, paperback, hardcover, ebook, audiobook generally are the options. But some authors with their Kickstarters for literary stuff will do more: magnets, bookmarks, that kind of thing. Are you doing anything aside from the books themselves as goals?
Yeah, I always do some additional stuff. People like to have some additional swag. So I'm doing nothing really fancy this time, but I'm doing bookmarks. I've got stickers, and I'm doing these postcards from like different planets cool. that are important in the series. So yeah, that's going to be fun, and like buttons, and even a patches for the spaceship, like an iron-on patch, and there's various other ways you can, like at the higher levels you can have a character named after you, or you can name them, or even name like a corporation or a planet, and stuff like that. So there's intangible rewards, and then also physical things that I will send you. So, and those will get sent out as over the course of the project. So, and it's going to go on for the first book. My goal is to have it out in November, and then I'm going to release another book every 2 months after that. And it might be faster than that, but I'm trying to be conservative. And then the other rewards will get sent out also over that time period. So over I guess 10 months or so for 5 books.
Do you think there's any chance of literary sprawl where you end up with a longer series than you planned?
I kind of hope so, because there's definitely the material is definitely there, because the universe is the galaxy is huge. There's going to be a lot going on, and I am definitely not going to be able to explain everything in the first 5 books. There's going to be a satisfactory ending where I wrap up the main story, but there's going to be a whole other a lot of other mysteries that do not get answered. So I could easily extend the series, but we'll see what the response is to them and how I'm feeling about that at the time. I do get sometimes I need to take a break. Like with the Iron Dragon books, I wrote 3 of them. I went and did another project, and then I wrote the last 2 to kind of wrap up some things that I had left open. And I might do something like that again. I like to move around. That's one of the things that I have a hard time sticking with one thing for longer than 5 books or so. But I don't know. We'll see how I feel and see what the reaction is, if people are clamoring for more, or if it feels like it's time to wrap things up.
So possibly, based on the way you've described the world to date, even after this series ends, you could tell other series in this universe.
Yeah, what I would probably do is have another 5-book series. Just in a similar kind of format, some kind of arc. The way that these books will work is each book is going to be more or less self-contained. It's sort of episodic, like a TV series, but then there's a series arc that also is happening at the same time. So that's kind of the balance that as an author you kind of want to aim for with a series, where people can pick up, the third book and not feel like they're missing all kinds of stuff, like with a TV show where you can just start at any episode and it doesn't feel like you don't have any idea what's going on, because the story is still going to make sense even if you don't get all the references and stuff. But you also want to have that kind of satisfactory feeling of like, oh yeah, that's right, we met him back in book 1 and now he's important because of this, and that's why, and these threads are coming together, and that feels always feels very satisfying to have these threads come together, different aspects of the plot. And that's one of the nice things about being an author and being in charge of the whole universe, because a lot of times, like what happens with a TV show is, they'll change writers or change producers or whoever 2 or 3 seasons in, and all of a sudden it'll be like, wait a minute, what happened to this mystery that we were all waiting to find out, about in the second season, and you never resolve that, and then they won't do it because it's that the producer just doesn't think that people are interested in that or whatever. So it's nice to be kind of the George Lucas, right, where you're the one to bring it back to the Star Wars thing, where you have this vision and you want to do the whole thing, rather than kind of people coming in afterwards going, oh, well, I'll just focus on this little aspect, and I don't really like this stuff about, the Force or good versus evil, whatever, but I want to do this. And so I like the idea of having the whole universe and having there be an arc and arcs that are satisfactory as a whole.
Okay. What can you tell us about the world writ large? Like, is it FTL? Is it a post-Terran society?
I haven't actually figured out what the role of Earth is going to be yet in this. That's one thing is still kind of up in the air, so to speak. But it is, it's sort of it's not a galactic empire, because there's no real, there's no empire, there's no central control really. What there is there's this sort of mesh of semi-independent corporations, and so there aren't really political and economic power is kind of mixed, and so you have this sort of kind of a dystopian milieu environment that's mixed with the kind of classic space opera. So it's sort of, if you took something like Star Wars, but I don't know, but made the, instead of there being the evil empire and the rebels fighting them, you have kind of this mishmash of corporations, and it's not always clear who's good. And there really aren't any. There are good guys and bad guys, because I always have good guys and bad guys in my stories. But of these organizations, it's not clear if any of them are particularly good or particularly bad, and which is which. And so the heroes in the middle of this have to kind of navigate this universe. So it's sort of like, the best example I can think of is there were books. It's a little bit like a cyberpunk dystopia, where you have corporations and kind of a post political mega corporation dominated world. I guess that's probably, but it's in a space opera setting. That's about the closest that I can come to a description of it.
So, where did you get the idea that is the Ransom's Law series? Like, where did it come from?
That's a good question. I don't really know where a lot of my ideas come from. I know I wanted to write some kind of a space opera, and I had been thinking for actually years about how to do it, and I couldn't think of anything that seemed really like everything. Every idea that I had, it kind of seemed like it was going to pull me too close to Star Wars, or too close to Star Trek, or too close to The Expanse or Battlestar Galactica. It was always I always thought it was going to feel like one of those things. And I very much didn't want to write a clone of something that existed. I wanted to have something different. And I don't really know where the idea for the repoing spaceships came from, but then I thought it would be interesting if I had a character who started off as a lawyer, kind of a hotshot lawyer, and then gets reassigned by this corporation as kind of a punishment to this repo ship. The example that I wanted to that I think of, sort of the archetype of that, is if you've seen that Tom Cruise movie that they used a couple different titles for, The Edge of Tomorrow or whatever. Yeah. I forget what they ended up calling it, but anyway, where he's kind of a jerk. He's kind of a pompous jerk in the beginning of it, and he thinks he's hot stuff, and he himself is not going to do any fighting, but he's kind of a the guy who kind of shows up. I forget what his actual job was, marketing or something. But so that's what that's his level of involvement. And then he has this commander who decides that no, Tom Cruise is gonna actually be boots on the ground, fighting. So he gets thrown into the battle, and then of course goes from there. And that's sort of the idea in my head, where you have this sort of hotshot who thinks he's hot stuff, and it's like, okay, well, now we're going to put you down in the thick of things and see how you do.
Okay. I'm interested. So you said you're going to start writing it soon. It'll be coming out by November.
First book, November, yeah.
First book. What about audiobooks?
Audiobooks, they're not part of the Kickstarter, but I will definitely be doing audiobooks. And I think I will probably do another, either a Kickstarter or some, I haven't figured out yet some kind of a crowdfunding campaign, because what I've done with several of my books now, Amazon has this AI audiobook narration, it's reasonably good. I mean, it's not perfect, but it works pretty well. And for what it costs me to get a good human narrator, it's very difficult to justify the expense when I can have an AI do it. But what I thought, since I know people are hate AI and would much rather, and I would rather have a person too narrate it if I could afford it. So what I want to do is, once the series itself is funded and I have the money for that, I want to do another campaign and say, okay, if you want a human being to narrate this thing, I will do that. But I got to have the money for it. I have to prove that I can pay this person, because they're good narrators they're very, very expensive. If you have any experience with that, it can, they can cost, I don't even know what the standard rates are anymore. $200 to $500 or more dollars per finished hour of the book. So if you have a 10-hour audiobook and you're paying, say $200, that's $2,000 I had to come up with out of my pocket up front for that book. And, I'm a reasonably successful author, but that's $2,000 is a lot to spend up front on a single book for just the audiobook. So, if I probably will do a crowdfunding campaign to secure that financing, to let people put their money where their mouth is if they want to get a human narrator.
Okay. Given that this book isn't written yet, and obviously we don't want spoilers of the larger plan because that you've already figured out, is there anything else about the Ransom's Lost series that you think we need to know before we bring this to a close?
I think it's what I'm aiming for with these books is I want them to be entertaining. I've done, people who know my stuff, I've done a lot of different kinds of stuff. I read a lot of humorous sci-fi, and I've written more serious stuff like Iron Dragon and several other Mammon, the Mammon series, and they're kind of apocalyptic sci-fi stuff that is very straight sci-fi, not jokey at all. And for these books, I'm really trying to aim for kind of right down the middle, where it's very much entertaining and there are moments of humor, but the humor all comes kind of organically out of the story. It's not just wacky slapstick stuff. So I just want it to be kind of a good old-fashioned space opera, just an entertaining story, kind of like we were talking about in the beginning, the way that Star Wars was, where it's like, there are things that make you laugh, there's things that make you cheer, and with a little bit more of a gritty edge to it, maybe with the politics and the scheming and stuff. But I just want it to be entertaining. I want it to be an entertaining series. So that's my goal with this.
Okay. We will link the Kickstarter link in the show notes, dear listener. So this is part of the interview where I remind you all to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right books, and it really does make a difference. With that said, even if you buy it through the Kickstarter, you can always go later and add it to Amazon, but Kickstarter will let you leave feedback as well there. So if you purchase things there, it definitely helps, because while the Kickstarter, by the time you're doing that, will be closed, and obviously you're not influencing future readers there. The next time he runs a Kickstarter, those reviews will be something they see that, he delivered, you like the product, so that it helps even with the Kickstarter and other crowdfunding. And how might listeners find you, Robert?
Well, my website is badnovelist.com, and I think all of my social media links are on there. Then you can also go to basedcon.com if you want to look into BasedCon. And the other main thing is Kickstarter, the Ransom's Law Kickstarter, and you can find that. That's a link to on my website too, or or just go to Kickstarter and type in Ransom's Law.
All righty. And you can find us, dear listener, on our Linktree, linktr.ee, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast. Again, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast, where we link to all the things, the BitChutes, the Rumble, the YouTube, the TikTok, the Twitters. We've got our Spotify, our Discord, our Blasters and Blades Facebook group and Facebook page. We have our email, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. For professional purposes only, people save the shenanigans from Madam Stabby Stab over there on the Instagram, the Twitter, and the email. You can support the show by going to buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that is for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink that coffee brand coffee till it pours out of their eyeballs, and then we will swim away on a river of Java goodness, people. You can get some of that coffee brand coffee yourself if you use the link in the show notes. The code is Podcast Grunts. You get 10% off. We get a little bit of a kickback. It's a win-win, people. And with that, thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades Podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time. We will indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, send-off things that go boom. All right, thank you for coming on, Rob. This was fun.
Cool, thank you.
All right, and with that, we're going to stop recording. Don't cuss yet, sir. Wait for it.